From next month, my mother will be living with us. Clear out the room.
Even over the phone, I could tell my husband Mason was smirking. His mother, who was with him, was probably laughing at me too. Imagining the two of them, I had to stifle my laughter. Okay, I'll call a moving company to move my stuff.
Huh? A moving company?
Mason's voice changed from laughter to confusion. I couldn't help but laugh out loud this time.
Why?
I'm divorcing you.
What?
I hung up after saying that and turned to my two accomplices. Let's get started. They nodded with a smile. I moved all my belongings out and sold the house. A few days later, Mason called me multiple times.
What did you do to my house?
What are you talking about? That house is mine. I paid the mortgage. Since I'm not using it, of course, I sold it.
Oh.
It seemed he finally remembered. I then called Mason and his mother to a restaurant to confront them. My name is Sophia. I'm 56 years old and work from home as a part-time housewife. I used to work for a company, but due to certain circumstances, I became self-employed and earned a decent income. My husband Mason also works, but he keeps all his earnings for himself and doesn't give me a cent. So, I support our current lifestyle. Mason's mother, Abigail, lives alone in his family home. Abigail is troublesome. Whenever something happens, she says,
Mason, Sophia did this.
Sophia, why can't you be kind to my mother?
Mason always takes Abigail's side and prioritizes her over me. Abigail is also good at putting on a facade, so in the neighborhood around the family home, I'm seen as the bad daughter-in-law who neglects her.
Sophia, can you teach me how to cook next time?
Sure, I'd love to. My only allies are my niece, Ella, a university student, and my brother-in-law, Michael. Michael is Mason's sister's husband. Mason's sister passed away in a car accident when Ella was still young. Michael, being a busy doctor, and with his parents also deceased, I took care of Ella, and she grew attached to me.
Why should you be kind to people who only speak ill of you, like Mason and Grandma?
Ella calls me Sophia and stands up to Mason and Abigail for me. When Michael is around, he subtly intervenes and helps. Thanks to the two of them, I can still manage to deal with this family. While I was working, the intercom rang. I sighed and trudged to the door. Sorry to keep you waiting.
You're late. Making me wait in this scorching heat. Do you want me to collapse?
Abigail complained as she barged into the house. Abigail often visits unannounced like this. As soon as she enters, she plops down on the sofa.
What are you standing around for? Hurry up and bring me some coffee. And some sweets too. I'm in the mood for something sweet today, so bring me some cake.
Yes, understood. Once it gets like this, I can't get any work done. Abigail sits on the sofa, giving me orders while lounging and watching TV. At first, I ignored her or argued back, but things would get thrown at me if I wasn't careful. Plus, Mason would yell at me when he got home, so it was better to stay quiet. Ideally, I wouldn't let her in, but if I pretended not to be home, she'd ring the intercom repeatedly and shout, drawing the neighbor's attention. So, I had no choice but to let her in.
Look at this mess. Can't you even clean up as a wife?
That's because Mason. Abigail pointed at the mess Mason made while searching for his phone before leaving for work. The phone was eventually found plugged into the charger in the bedroom, and he left after complaining. Just as I was about to clean it up, Abigail arrived.
Blaming Mason for your inability to do housework. You're such a terrible wife.
I'm sorry. I held back the urge to shout that it was your son's fault and quickly cleaned up. Then, I glanced at the clock. It was almost time for my online meeting. I'm sorry, but I have work to do.
Work? Oh, you mean that game? You don't do any housework and just play games all day.
Abigail, being old-fashioned, doesn't understand working from home. She thinks I'm playing games when I'm working on my computer. No matter how many times I explained, she wouldn't listen. Please leave for today.
You're so noisy. Why did Mason marry someone like you?
By the time I managed to get Abigail out, the meeting was about to start. I hurried to prepare. Sorry for being late. The other party kindly said it was okay. They understood the situation because Abigail had barged in before. After the meeting ended, I went around the house to check everything. Not again. All the prepared meals in the fridge were gone, and my brand name bag was missing. This always happens when Abigail comes over. It's normal for things to go missing. I was beyond angry at Abigail's behavior and sighed, holding my head in frustration.
I heard from Mom. You kicked her out in this heat, didn't you?
I have work to do too. If that's the case, tell her to stop coming over unannounced.
Mom comes over to teach you how to be a proper wife. And you talk to her like that?
Mason yelled at me as soon as he got home. I argued back, but as usual, he wouldn't listen to my side. Is stealing my belongings and preparing meals part of being a mother-in-law?
Mom would never do such a thing. Stop making things up. Especially since you're infertile.
Infertile. That word made me fall silent. The truth is, I have a hard time conceiving. I love children, so this fact still torments me. Mason laughed at my silence and headed to the bedroom. He used to have good qualities. Mason wasn't always like this.
We don't need children. Let's live a happy life together.
That's what he used to say. Looking back, he might have said those sweet words because he didn't want to lose me. Shortly after I was diagnosed with infertility, Mason's sister passed away. Abigail wanted to keep her only grandchild, and since Michael, being a doctor, was sending money, she wanted to keep him close. However, Abigail, who preferred boys, didn't want to take care of a girl. So, Mason couldn't let go of me, who seemed willing to take care of Ella, and used words that would make me happy to keep me around. I didn't mind taking care of Ella, and Michael supported me, so it wasn't a problem.
Abigail, Mason, I'm grateful to Sophia. That's why I'll continue to send money, but if your behavior becomes intolerable, you know what will happen, right?
I am still safe because he warned them so. I also don't want to lose my connection with Ella and Michael, so I haven't divorced Mason and have been complying. That said, I'm reaching my limit. Since then, Mason had been completely ignoring me. Living in such a tense atmosphere was suffocating.
What? What's this?
Suddenly, a large number of packages arrived from Abigail. When I checked the contents, they were filled with clothes, small items, and other household goods. I immediately called Abigail, but there was no answer.
Sophia!
Ella? As I was wondering what to do, Ella rushed in. I let her in, and she, out of breath, began to explain.
I overheard a conversation the other day. Grandma is planning to move in here with you without your permission.
Her words made my mind go blank. I was already stressed, and the idea of living together was out of the question. Thank you for telling me. But how did you hear that?
Remember when you told me about your things being stolen?
Indeed, I had complained to Ella about Abigail and mentioned my missing belongings and prepared meals. Ella had visited the family home under the pretense of bringing Michael's remittance and tried to find my belongings. That's when she overheard Abigail's conversation on the phone.
Grandma sold all the bags she stole from you and went on a trip with Mason.
What? My bags?
I heard from Dad that they were bragging about it loudly in the morning.
I called Mason next. As expected, he didn't answer.
Sophia,
What is it?
do you love Mason?
Ella asked seriously. I shook my head.
Then I have a suggestion. I talked to Dad, and he thinks it's a great idea.
Ella made a surprising proposal, and I decided to accept it. A few hours later, Mason called me. Hello.
Sorry. I was on a plane and had my phone off. So, what's up?
Abigail's packages arrived. Mason's cheerful voice, which I hadn't heard in a while, came through. I responded calmly.
We're going to live with Mom.
I didn't hear about that.
Your opinion doesn't matter. Mom's moving in next month. So, clear out the room.
Even over the phone, I could tell Mason was smirking. Abigail, who was with him, was probably laughing at me too. Imagining the two of them, I had to stifle my laughter. Okay, I'll call a moving company to move my stuff.
Huh? A moving company?
Mason's voice changed from laughter to confusion. This time, I couldn't help but laugh out loud.
Why?
I'm divorcing you.
What?
I hung up after saying that and turned to my two accomplices. Let's get started. They nodded with a smile. I moved all my belongings out and sold the house. After all, I was the one paying the mortgage. I'm a freelance programmer. I became independent to take care of Ella, and my clients continued to give me work and recommend me to others, so I was earning quite well. I could afford to pay the $1,800 monthly mortgage on the house and cover living expenses. On the other hand, Mason's take-home pay was at most $1,200 a month. With his earnings alone, it would be difficult to live in that house. Thank you for your help, Michael.
I'm glad I could assist.
Michael and Ella were the ones who helped me at that time. Ella said to me,
Sophia, If you don't mind, why don't you come live with us?
What? At your place? But
Don't worry about it. Actually, we've been talking about how we could protect you.
protect me. Both Ella and Michael were grateful to me and were angry about how Mason and Abigail treated me. So, they were looking for an opportunity to get me away from them. But wouldn't it be a burden?
No, not at all. In fact, we want you to come for Dad's sake too.
With her serious eyes, I agreed to stay at Michael's house. When Ella contacted Michael, he immediately brought movers.
I'm sure we surprised you. Sorry about that.
No, thank you for taking me in.
You're welcome.
So, I moved into Michael's house while Mason and Abigail were away on their trip. During that time, Michael was very kind to me.
Sophia, you are really strong. But from now on, please rely on me too.
Hearing those words, my heart fluttered for the first time in a long while. A few days later, Mason called me.
What the hell? What did you do to my house?
What are you talking about? That house is mine. I paid the mortgage. Since I'm not using it, of course, I sold it.
Oh,
It seemed he finally remembered. I then called Mason and Abigail to a restaurant to confront them.
Hey! What's going on?
Please don't raise your voice. It's unseemly. Other customers are watching. I chose the restaurant because there were other people around. Abigail, who cares about appearances, couldn't argue back in public.
why did you sell it? And when I looked through the window, most of the furniture and appliances were gone too.
Those were my personal belongings that I bought with my own money. I took what I needed to my new place and sold the rest to a recycling shop.
Where did you move? I'll come too.
There's no way I'm telling you. We're getting a divorce. Mason froze at my words. Did he think I was joking? Or did he never imagine I would divorce him?
No, you can't be serious about the divorce, right?
I'm serious. I've fallen out of love with you. I'm divorcing you and demanding alimony.
What?
I showed Mason the evidence of the verbal abuse he had subjected me to. These were just copies. The originals were with my lawyer. The lawyer had assured me that this was enough to claim alimony.
You won't be able to live without me.
Sorry to disappoint you, but I earn more than twice what you do. Next, I showed him my income records. In fact, divorcing him would be better for me. If you give up your share of the assets, I won't demand alimony.
Can't you reconsider? I accepted you even though you're infertile.
How can you say that? You've always told me not to complain because I'm infertile. That statement is also recorded. With that, I took out the divorce papers. My part was already filled out. Mason stared at them, his face turning pale.
You, enough of this.
And this is for you, Abigail.
What?
I handed Abigail a photo of her putting my designer bag into her large bag. Since I suspected Abigail was taking my things, I had set up a camera in my room. Thanks to that, I had solid evidence. Initially, I planned to use this evidence to get my stolen items back, but it seemed she had sold them the same day she stole them.
What is this?
I could forgive you for stealing my prepared meals, but this is outright theft.
But we're family.
If it's a family member living separately, I can report it. And I have filed a police report. My words made both of them turn pale. No matter how much they tried to maintain appearances, being arrested would make them the subject of harsh scrutiny from the neighbors.
No way! Cancel the police report immediately!
Abigail raised her voice, drawing the attention of other customers, but she seemed too desperate to care. It depends on Mason.
What?
If you sign this divorce paper right now, I'll withdraw the police report. At those words, Abigail looked at Mason pleadingly. With trembling hands, Mason signed the divorce papers. I've received it. Well then, I'll be leaving now. After confirming all the necessary details were filled out, I took the bill as a final courtesy and left the restaurant first.
Mason, it's okay. Let's get rid of that wife. You can find a young and obedient wife.
I heard Abigail talking to Mason before I left the restaurant. They were so preoccupied with themselves that they didn't notice, but some neighbors from the in-laws area were dining there. I saw them looking at Mason and Abigail suspiciously. Thinking about their future made me smile. Mason and I successfully divorced. As promised, I didn't demand alimony and withdrew the police report.
Are you sure about this?
It's fine. I'd rather not give him any of my money, and even if I do nothing, they'll get their comeuppance. When I consulted with my lawyer, I had them investigate what Mason had been spending his money on. Apparently, Mason had been using his earnings for gambling. As a result, he had no savings at all. Even if he returned to his parents' house, life would be tough. Sometime later, Mason called me.
Please, help me.
The first thing he said was a plea for help. Without me asking, he started rambling about his current situation. Apparently, he tried to use the little money he had left to win back his gambling debts but failed miserably, accumulating even more debt. On top of that, Abigail had caused trouble with the neighbors. The neighbors who were at the restaurant spread the word about our conversation, and Abigail's good image quickly crumbled. Living under constant whispers from the neighbors, Abigail got angry and broke their belongings.
And then Mom got arrested.
Oh dear. Abigail must have always had a violent temper. Without me to take her frustrations out on, she couldn't handle the stress and lashed out. Mason had to sell the family home and move into a cheap apartment. However, with the debt and the compensation for Abigail's actions, Mason couldn't afford to pay.
Please, help me. We're still husband and wife, right?
Ex-husband. So, I have no obligation to help you. With that, I hung up the phone. I had a lot of unpleasant experiences with those neighbors, but this time they were helpful. Well, I don't want to get involved with them anymore. I thought everything would be fine, but Mason seems to be persistent.
Hey! I know you're in there.
Sometime later, Mason showed up at our house. I happened to be with Michael, who was off that day, and we decided to deal with Mason together.
Hey! Give me back my wife.
Ex-wife, You mean? Have you forgotten what you did to Sophia?
As he said this, Michael put his arm around my shoulder. Mason's eyes widened as I didn't resist at all. Actually, the day after my divorce with Mason was finalized, Michael confessed to me.
I've always liked you, Sophia, for supporting us. I know it's soon after your divorce, and it might trouble you, but...
That's what he said. However, I had never seen Michael in that light, so I hadn't given him an answer yet. But seeing how reliable he was this time, I have to admit I was starting to feel attracted to him.
There's no place for you here. Please leave.
At least restart the allowance.
I refuse. The allowance was originally given because your ex-wife was technically still a mother, and it was continued as a thank you for taking care of Ella. It should have been Sophia receiving it.
Rejected by us, Mason left with his shoulders slumped. I hope this makes him give up. I watched his back coldly as he left. I heard about Mason's situation from mutual acquaintances. After that, Mason's and Abigail's actions were exposed at work, and he had to quit his only source of income. He tried to find another job, but no company would hire him. Most of the companies in the area had done business with me and knew my situation. So, finding a job would be difficult. Mason was caught by debt collectors and forced to work. Abigail was also taken and made to do menial tasks. Apparently, he tried to come to me before being taken away.
Sophia, I think we should move far away just in case.
I agree. So, we moved even further away, and they couldn't find us. With Ella's encouragement, Michael and I got engaged.
I can finally call you Mom, Sophia.
I felt happy, though a bit embarrassed, at Ella's words. Thank you. I've always thought of you as a daughter, so I'm happy too.
Yeah.
When I get married, you have to be there as my mother.
And there was one more good thing. Luna, it's dinner time. A cat rubbed against my leg. I had always wanted a cat, but Mason had opposed it. When I told Michael, he was all for it, and we adopted a rescue cat. Fortunately, the cat warmed up to us quickly. Unlike the time with Mason, life with a warm and kind family. This is true happiness. Then, Michael and I got married. At first, we were too embarrassed to have a wedding.
No way! You finally became a couple. And I want to see your wedding.
So, we had a small family-only ceremony. Ella, now an adult, became independent.
I'll find a partner who can be like Mom and Dad.
Hey, make sure you focus on work too.
Of course.
Ella aimed to become a doctor like her father. It would take some time, but she would surely become a wonderful doctor. Michael will be home soon. I petted the cat's back while looking at the photos from our wedding. Then I heard the front door open. I picked up the cat and went to greet him. Welcome home.
I'm home.
When I greeted Michael with the cat, he returned my smile warmly. The days of suffering under Mason and Abigail were completely opposite to these peaceful and loving days I never imagined back then. I will continue to cherish my daily life with my precious family.
How did you like this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.